Warning, if you've been losing interest in everything lately, if the things that once motivated you no longer spark anything inside you, if your days feel quieter, heavier, or strangely neutral, don't rush to label this as laziness, failure, or depression, because what you're experiencing may not be the end of you. It may be the moment something inside you has finally decided to change. There are phases in life where the world stops speaking the language it once did. Music doesn't hit the same. Goals that once fueled you now feel distant. Conversations feel repetitive. Ambitions that once defined you suddenly feel empty. And when this happens, the mind panics. It asks, "What's wrong with me? Why don't I care anymore? Why does nothing excite me?" But here's the truth most people never hear. Loss of interest is often the first sign that your old identity is dissolving. You are not losing interest because you are broken. You are losing interest because something deeper is no longer satisfied with surface-level meaning. This is not apathy. This is not weakness. This is not you giving up on life. This is your inner system quietly withdrawing energy from things that no longer align with who you are becoming. Spiritual awakenings don't always arrive as lightning bolts or dramatic revelations. Sometimes they arrive as silence, as boredom, as detachment, as a sense that the old world no longer fits. You may feel like you're standing in between versions of yourself. The old one no longer feels real. The new one hasn't fully arrived yet, and that space feels uncomfortable. It feels empty. It feels confusing, but it is sacred because transformation does not begin with excitement. It begins with disinterest. Here's something no one prepares you for. When your awareness expands, your nervous system changes first. Your tolerance for noise decreases. Your patience for meaningless routines fades. Your desire for constant stimulation disappears. Not because you've become numb, but because your system is recalibrating. You are no longer driven by external validation, dopamine, or survival urgency. You're being pulled inward. That's why scrolling feels exhausting. That's why forced conversations drain you. That's why chasing goals that once impressed others now feels pointless. Your soul is asking a different question now. Not, "How do I get more?" but, "Why am I doing this at all?" This is the stage where many people misunderstand themselves. They try to force motivation. They try to recreate old passion. They try to shame themselves back into productivity. And it only makes things worse, because you cannot revive interest in something your awareness has outgrown. This phase is not about doing more, it's about unlearning. Unlearning who you thought you had to be. Unlearning identities built from pressure, comparison, and expectation. Unlearning desires that were never truly yours. You may feel disconnected from your past self. Old memories feel distant. Old goals feel irrelevant. Even old relationships may feel misaligned, and that can be scary. But this is the exact moment where people either numb themselves or awaken. If you let this phase pass naturally, something remarkable happens. Clarity slowly replaces confusion. Depth replaces noise. Purpose replaces pressure. But you must allow the emptiness first, because emptiness is not absence, it's preparation. Here's what most people don't realize. This phase doesn't last forever, but it will last as long as you resist it. The moment you stop trying to fix yourself, the moment you stop demanding answers, the moment you stop forcing excitement, something begins to shift. You start noticing subtle things again. Moments of stillness feel meaningful. Truth feels more important than comfort. Peace feels more valuable than achievement. And slowly, new interests emerge. Not loud ones, not ego-driven ones, but grounded ones. Interests rooted in alignment, not escape. Curiosity driven by truth, not distraction. Goals born from purpose, not fear. You don't become more ambitious, you become more intentional. And that's when you realize something profound. You didn't lose interest in life. You lost interest in living a life that wasn't authentic. This phase is not asking you to act. It's asking you to listen, because what comes next won't be a return to who you were. It will be a quieter, clearer, more conscious version of you, one who no longer chases meaning, because they've learned how to recognize it. If this resonated with you, if this described something you haven't been able to put into words, you're not alone. And this is only the beginning. There is a moment during this phase when you realize something unsettling. You don't miss your old life the way you thought you would. You remember the habits, you remember the routines, you remember the version of yourself that was always chasing, planning, proving. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe for daily cosmic insights, astrology updates, and spiritual guidance, because the universe always has a message for you. But emotionally, there's distance, and that distance isn't coldness, it's clarity. You begin to see how much of your previous motivation was fueled by fear. Fear of falling behind, fear of being unseen, fear of disappointing others, fear of not becoming something. When that fear dissolves, urgency dissolves with it, and suddenly, the world moves slower than you do. This is why people around you may not understand you anymore. They may say you've changed, they may say you've become quiet, they may say you've lost your drive. But what they're really sensing is this: you are no longer running on the same operating system. You are no longer motivated by noise. You are no longer controlled by pressure. You are no longer hypnotized by outcomes. You are becoming present. And presence looks boring to a world addicted to stimulation. This phase can feel lonely, even when you're not alone. You may be surrounded by people and still feel untouched. You may have conversations and feel like you're observing from a distance. You may smile, respond, function, yet feel internally separate. Not because you don't care, but because your awareness has shifted inward. You're no longer living on the surface of experience. You're living beneath it. And here's the strange part. The more you stop chasing excitement, the more you start noticing truth. You notice how much of life is performance, how much energy is spent pretending, how many people are exhausted but never admit it. And you quietly decide you don't want to live that way anymore. This is where discernment is born. You stop giving energy automatically. You stop explaining yourself endlessly. You stop forcing alignment where there is none. You become selective, not out of ego, but out of self-respect. And that's when your inner world starts to feel safer than the outer one. At some point, the discomfort changes texture. It's no longer panic. It's no longer confusion. It becomes stillness. You wake up one day and realize the emptiness isn't screaming anymore. It's quiet, neutral, observant. And in that stillness, something ancient activates: intuition. You begin sensing what drains you before it happens. You begin noticing misalignment instantly. You begin trusting silence more than words. This is the stage where your nervous system finally relaxes, because it knows something your mind is still catching up to. You are safe now. You don't need to prove. You don't need to rush. You don't need to become anything to be worthy. And once that realization lands, interest begins returning. But in a completely different form. Not obsession, not addiction, not attachment, but curiosity, gentle, grounded, aligned. This is where the rebirth actually begins, not with fireworks, not with announcements, but with quiet choices. You choose peace over drama, truth over approval, depth over distraction. You start feeling drawn to things that nourish you instead of excite you. Silence, nature, meaningful conversations, creative expression without pressure. And for the first time, your energy feels protected. You're no longer leaking yourself into everything and everyone. You're contained, centered, and from that center, clarity emerges. You begin understanding why everything had to fall apart emotionally first, why interest had to fade, why motivation had to die, because the old fuel source was unsustainable. And now, if you're in this phase right now, hear this clearly. Nothing has gone wrong. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding versions of you that were built to survive, so you can finally exist. This isn't the end of joy, it's the end of chasing it. What comes next will feel simpler, but deeper, quieter, but truer. And one day you'll look back at this period, the boredom, the detachment, the loss of interest, and realize this was the moment everything real began. If this reached you at the right time, if this felt uncomfortably accurate, if something inside you softened while listening, that's not coincidence. It means you're ready, and this was the message you were meant to hear. There is a moment when you stop waiting for life to start again. You realize you've been standing in the middle of it the entire time. The waiting dissolves, the impatience fades, the constant scanning for the next thing quiets down. You stop asking, "When will I feel normal again?" Because you begin to understand normal was never the goal. Normal was survival. Alignment is living. This is when you stop trying to fill the silence. You let it speak instead. And the silence tells you things noise never could. It tells you where you've been betraying yourself, where you've been shrinking, where you've been tolerating instead of choosing. It reveals truths gently, not to punish you, but to free you. And for the first time, you don't run from those truths. You sit with them. This is the stage where your internal compass resets. You no longer measure life by excitement or achievement. You measure it by resonance. Does this feel honest? Does this feel clean inside my body? Does this drain me or restore me? Your standards rise, not in arrogance, but in awareness. You stop forcing connections that require masks. You stop committing to paths that require self-abandonment. You stop chasing versions of success that cost you your peace. And slowly, almost quietly, you begin trusting yourself again. Not the impulsive self, not the anxious self, but the observing self. The one that notices before reacting. The one that feels before deciding. The one that no longer needs chaos to feel alive. And that trust becomes the foundation of everything new that enters your life. This is where people start sensing something different about you. They can't name it. They just feel it. Your energy no longer asks for permission. Your presence no longer seeks validation. Your silence feels intentional, not empty. Some people will drift away here, not because you rejected them, but because you stopped chasing. And that's okay. This phase isn't about gathering, it's about filtering. What stays now stays because it's aligned, not because it's familiar, not because it's comfortable. And in this refined space, creativity returns, love returns, curiosity returns, but it arrives softly, without urgency, without obsession. It feels like remembering something ancient rather than discovering something new. One day, without warning, you'll realize something profound. You're interested again, not in everything, not in noise, not in distractions, but in life itself, in moments, in truth, in depth, in being fully here. And you'll understand why everything had to go quiet first, why interest had to disappear, why motivation had to collapse, why the old world had to fade. Because this version of you could not have been born in chaos. It required stillness, honesty, and courage to sit in the unknown without escaping it. If you're still in the middle of this phase, trust it. If you've just come out of it, honor it. And if this video found you when you needed words for something you couldn't explain, then you already know. This wasn't a warning of loss. It was a confirmation of awakening, and this journey is only just beginning.